all the discussion we've had in the past day and a bit about solving these huge problems, these big problems, these existential problems. And I couldn't help but thinking, you know, with greatest respect to a lot of the men in the room, there's a lot of faces that look like me looking in a mirror, and we need to change that. And if you're of the other gender, then think of yourselves too at that part of your career, because now it's the exciting time that we, at this stage of our career, get to hand problems on to the new ones. And we're looking for the solutions for the big problems. Good afternoon, my name's Iain MacKenzie. I'm a member of the board of Natural Hazards Research Australia, and I'm your MC for the next 2 hours through this exciting session. I'd firstly like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Turrbal and Yugara people, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all First Nations people here today, and acknowledge the lands and the waters of which we are on and enjoying to be present on, lands which have always been places of teaching, research and learning. So welcome to the inaugural Disaster Challenge and the final. Now it's time for some fun. And it's the challenge we've said is a challenge to solve a wicked problem. And today, of course, as you all know, is the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction. And I'm sure you're also aware that each year there is a theme centred around the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. And this year's theme was to substantially increase the availability of and access to multi-hazard early warning systems and disaster risk information and assessments to people by 2030. That's a bit of a mouthful and a bit of a challenge. But I read that and I thought it was interesting reading it today because yesterday we saw another review released, the IGEM review into the flooding events in southeast Queensland earlier this year. And guess what? I think the major theme was out of that review was again warnings and information availability to people in need, so it's accurate, relevant and timely. Of course, I joked with someone earlier, I thought there needed to be another recommendation that says just do all the previous recommendations from all the previous reviews and we won't do it again and we'll have it right. But we set the wicked problem that we set this group of up and coming learned individuals was to explore how disaster preparation can engage with the unengaged, the moving and the hard to reach. Now, why is that a wicked problem? Because frankly, most of the information and engagement programs that we have and materials that we have target people who live full-time in residential places at a place somewhere on this planet. But many people just don't fit that category any longer. And at any given time, people are on the move, whether that's for work, play, holidays, or in this changing world because they need to, because the place that they have lived is no longer suitable for future living. Others just have living arrangements that are more transient. And we know that those that are less socially connected in communities suffer the most when disasters occur. So what is a wicked problem? A wicked problem is one that is urgent, that's difficult to solve because of incomplete or even contradictory information. And we've heard, you know, the notion of contradictory research even in the past day and a half. A wicked problem calls for new ideas. It calls for new thinking and it calls for new research. So to deliver on that, we've got some of our best and brightest minds. Our PhD students and early career researchers that have put their creative talents together to present possible solutions to our wicked problem. And in the challenge final this afternoon, you'll see 3 innovative and very different approaches to that one problem that we've posed. And we'd also like to thank all of the other teams that entered. There were many teams that entered. A select panel went through it and narrowed it to these 3 groups. But we have our top 3 here today that we'll get to listen to shortly. So it's encouraging to see that passion exists at that level of researcher. Our finalists will hear about a new solution to harness community connections with culturally and linguistically diverse communities with Jyoti Khatri and Mohammed Al-Khatani from the Queensland University of Technology. Then we'll learn how Wi-Fi can be used at tourism venues to teach tourists about what to do in the area during an emergency. And we'll hear from Mark Owens from CFA and Dr. Kamara Pooley from Fire and Rescue New South Wales. And finally, we have Jane Toner, Sheridan Keegan, Ahmed Kazim, Lin Lu Kopman, Yuzhen Wang, Minori Disaniyaka from Griffith University, along with Christina Hernandez-Santon from RMIT, who will show us of the value of creative placemaking and art that can bring communities together. These are our top 3 teams, as selected by our expert working group, and Andrew I'll ask to come up shortly to talk about that group. Our hope is that all 3 finalists that you see today can take their concept further. And that's a call to action for everybody in the room to think about how they can take that concept further. And I know some people just on the topics are already thinking about who we can contact and how to make that of greater use. So as you watch these presentations today, think about it in terms of your work and how you can help take that forward. Now, there's more than bragging rights on offer this afternoon. These teams will all, I was going to say go away. I don't know if you go away with cash in your pocket necessarily, but there are prizes associated. First, the first place winners will receive $5,000. No one goes away empty-handed. Second place receive $2,000 and third place will receive $1,000. I'd like to welcome our judges, our very special judges who are sitting in the front. Kath Ryan, Manager of Public Information and Warnings Unit with Queensland Fire and Emergency Services. Thanks, Kath. Carl Peterson, Manager of Emergency Management and Public Safety with Moreton Bay Regional Council. Rebecca Norris, Director of Policy, Queensland Reconstruction Authority, and Associate Professor Andrew Taylor, a demographer at Charles Darwin University. Thank you, and thank you for your time. Our judges spent this morning with our finalists to learn more about their pitch and provide feedback. Over the coming time, we'll ask each team to come up, and we've given them 15 minutes, and I think you can just about set your watch by that 15 minutes from what I saw this morning, and they'll use that time very well. Remember, they are telling us why their solution will engage with the unengaged, the moving or the hard to reach with disaster preparedness information. After all the teams have pitched, our judges will retire for 20 minutes, and in that time we'll have 2 talks. We'll hear from Dr. Margaret Cook for about 15 minutes delivering a keynote, and we'll also have some time with Kate Rizki from Queensland Reconstruction Authority to hear about Get Ready Week here in Queensland and how they're engaging the hard to reach audiences. Before we kick off though, I would like to introduce our CEO, Andrew Gissing, to say a few words. Thanks, Andrew.
Okay, thanks to Iain, and great to see everybody here tonight. Really, also the teams. Really looking forward to hearing your presentations and your pitches. Excuse me. It's going to be really. This is what we're trying to ignite the power of innovation and that excitement for innovation, and as Iain was saying, the wicked problems that we're facing, and the need to really be thinking differently, that cross-disciplinary thought, and really bringing together this challenge we see as a really key way of driving that innovation in a different way than what we have previously. This is our first disaster challenge, and it rightly sits within the first Natural Hazard Research Forum that we're holding here on the day of International Disaster Risk Reduction, and also Get Ready Week in Queensland, and really looking forward to hearing Kate talk later on as well. We've had a working group that's worked really hard to pull this event together and inspire the great work that's gone on to date that we're all going to see here tonight. It's supported by not only NHRA, but our university partners, and most importantly to our wider emergency management organisation partners here as well, bringing it together. We couldn't do it without all of you involved. The other key thing here is that I've got some key people to thank. Mike Carroll, firstly from QFES, Cheryl Desher and Nancy Spencer from Griffith University, Lisa Schuster from QUT, Alexandra Freeney from QRA, Alison Riffai, Chris Kerr, Lucy Tamachi from iGEM Queensland, Helen Kerr Dyer from CQU, Barb Ryan from the University of Southern Queensland, Alastair Stark from the University of Queensland, Eden Wooden from the Office of Queensland Chief Scientist, Samantha Lloyd from Healthy Land and Water, Jack Thompson from the Red Cross, Siobhan Allen from the Queensland Police Service, Paul Salmon from the University of the Sunshine Coast, Nicola Moore from Natural Hazards Research Australia, who coordinated this group. I also want to pay a special tribute to Anne Swinburne from James Cook University. And it was great sadness that we learnt last week of her passing, and also made a fantastic contribution to the working group, and was very generous with her time and her sharing with the ideas. So tonight, Anne is certainly with us. So Anne is in our thoughts tonight throughout the challenge event. But you can see that the wide number of people that have been involved in getting us here today. So why is this challenge? So I've mentioned that innovation, but we've got so many examples of the challenges that we're facing with these wicked challenges in the future. That's what's coming out through this whole forum, right? And as I said on day one, it's not just the problems that we need to describe and research, it's the solutions. And tonight is really all about finding these innovative solutions, bringing them together, and helping to produce tangible change through research, innovation, and science. We are working here in this Wicked Challenge with the next generation of scientists and researchers and practitioners, and that's really important to help booster that through our education and training programs and initiatives like tonight as well. And tonight really involves all those individuals from a postgraduate lens and undergraduate as well. And there's much to learn from these pictures today. I'd also like to acknowledge the efforts of John Bates, our research director, who left us at Natural Hazards Research Australia a couple of weeks ago back. John was instrumental in really pulling together so much of today, and so much of his vision of the disaster challenge is what has been implemented here tonight and throughout the preceding months leading in. So thank you, John. I think you're online having a watch tonight. The other thing there too is the 2023 challenge. We will hold another one next year. Again, it'll be different again in terms of its focus, because there are so many different problems that we need to solve. So we'll focus on a different area of science and focus our wicked problem on that. So really encourage people's involvement in our challenge for 2023 as well. Let's make it bigger and better even than what we do here tonight. So good luck to all the finalists. Let's see how everybody goes. I'm really looking forward to seeing your pictures. So well done, and let's see some great work.
Thank you, Andrew. And can I just also echo Andrew's words in terms of my thoughts and wishes with Anne's colleagues and family, and I know she mentored one of the teams. So the teams are sitting here anxiously waiting. I think we've kept them waiting long enough. So I'm going to introduce Team 1, Mobilising Local, Culturally and Linguistically Diverse Stakeholders and Gatekeepers. Can I welcome, please, to the stage Jyoti Khatri and Mohammed Alakanti from Queensland University of Technology. Please welcome them.
Natural hazard is a shared reality of our community, but has it also been a shared responsibility? Good afternoon, all. This is Jyoti.
This is Mohammed.
And today we are pitching on mobilizing local, culturally, and linguistically diverse stakeholders and gatekeepers for disaster response.
Before we start, let's together watch this video. This video will give you an overview of information that we want to talk today.
Australia is one of the most ethnically diverse countries and is home to people from more than 200 different nations. The Australian Bureau of Statistics 2021 shows that 21.9% of Australian populations were born overseas. Australia is ranked 9th for migration destinations, and most of the Australian population migrated from China, India, and the Philippines. The 2016 to 2021 data shows that migration from countries like India, Nepal, China, Philippines, and Vietnam are escalating annually. The language diversity associated with majority of migrants living in Australia includes Mandarin 2.7, Arabic 1.4, Vietnamese 1.3, Cantonese 1.2, and Punjabi 0.9. Most of the Australian tourists come from China, Japan, and Singapore, while the country is also a popular tourist destination among the minority groups from other non-English speaking countries like Nepal, Bhutan, and Thailand. Like the diversity in Australian population, the country is also prone to diverse natural hazards. Some of the nation's common hazards are heat waves, floods, cyclones, bushfires, earthquakes, and hail. In the heat waves of 2009 in South Australia, 37% of those hospitalized were identified as people born overseas. People migrating from non-English speaking countries are impacted negatively due to language and cultural barriers. The culturally and linguistically diverse communities not only lack a proper understanding of Australia's physical and social environment, but also lack adequate awareness of local natural hazards.
Has everyone watched this video? Yes, Australia has a diversity of communities, including the Saudi Arabian community. Albert Einstein stated that the only source of knowledge is experience. Let me share my experience when I held my community here in Queensland. I came here in 2019. I held my community with bushfire disaster. Early 2020, COVID pandemic occurred. I held our elder illness people to be evacuated to Saudi Arabia. Today, I will just focus on the recent disaster, which is a flood. One day, my phone rang and Saudi government, Saudi council, called me and asked me, required me as my duty to locate and contact our people. We found that more than 23 families been impacted. As you can see here in the slide, they send these pictures to me. They are from different areas, such as West End, South Bank. They came to us because we share the same identities, same values, same religions, same culture. They put all the trust in us. Sometimes Arabs, Muslims, cannot speak to strangers. This type of challenge makes me feel hard and I cannot do anything. I asked one of my stakeholders to assist. They denied because of the lack of information of disasters. I imagine that if I wasn't able to help my community, even if I didn't have enough information, how I could help them. I want to finish by saying this. A disaster doesn't override cultural traditions. Even though I'm Saudi, I still keep in mind social interaction, important cultural information. Thank you. Next, we can watch a video could explain different even communities share their experiences with other communities.
Hello guys, how are you all? Good, how are you?
I'm okay. Haven't seen you in the office this weekend. Is everything okay with you? I'm still recovering from the flood disaster. Our unit got flooded and I and my roommate recently arrived from Nepal. This flood event was very traumatizing for us because it reminded us of the flood 2021, when our entire village was inundated. In that incident, many people lost their lives and shelters.
Oh, Sita, that's so unfortunate to hear. How are you settling now? If you need any help, please let me know. I represent Saudi student community during the recent flood and also during the pandemic. We supported many students and their family with food and shelter.
How did they contact you?
We are linked with virtual community and they can reach us through our community social media.
I understand how important it is to find someone from your community who can understand your needs, especially for newcomers like us. We don't know what to do, who to talk to. I'm also the member of Queensland Nepalese community managed by the Nepalese social workers. During COVID, they organized several awareness programs and posted important information in their Facebook page in our own language. It was very easy to understand and keep ourselves updated. Did you get any help during the flood? Yes, I and my friend contacted the president of the community and he assisted us to find one of the executive members in our suburb. He was very helpful and followed up with us regularly. He also helped us check the eligibility of the government assistance. We wouldn't know anything about this if we were to find it ourselves.
That's so true. One of my friends and her family was also impacted by the flood. They live in this suburb where majority are Sri Lankan families. They helped each other during the flood. We all are also the members of Sri Lankan Australians group. The group organized food bank for the flood affected victims and cleaning programs. The group understands our needs and can offer appropriate support.
I know it is very comfortable to share our problem in our own language with our people and ask for help. It's good that we have our communities and the social workers are doing awesome jobs.
As you watch this video and listen to Muhammad's story, actually, this also reminds that how complex is the cult community in Australia is. It also reminds me of my own experience as a community outreach volunteer during the recent flood where I had to deal with this refugee family. This family was impacted severely during the flood. Still, they managed to cope very well because they received support, all types of support, emotional, social, financial, everything, and they coped really well during the flood. And then during the conversation unfolded, what I discovered was they mentioned that they were not eligible for the government fund, not because they could not apply, but they did not know about the information. And even their community leaders and social workers were unaware about it. This problem could have been averted if the social workers were aware or well informed about such types of information. It was expected that this non-English speaking family could not extract information from the government website, but the social leaders could. And even what Muhammad just mentioned, that how he wished for more helping hands during the pandemic and even the flood. This problem could also be addressed by training and developing skills of these potential volunteers so that they could provide support during these types of disasters and also in future as well. Realizing the importance of training these stakeholders who actually link with their community and who are also capable of connecting their community with the government and other humanitarian organizations and other support organizations, we contacted the relevant organization, and despite several conversations going on for months, we're still in the following up phase. Imagine if this is the situation during non-emergency, what would happen during emergency? We already have limited resources. So in order to demonstrate, we want to present you a mock demonstration. So can we have our participants here, please?
Please, thank you. If you allow me, Judy, I will go first.
Sure.
And allow me, everyone, I will speak mother tongue. Assalamu alaikum. ما شاء الله يعطيكم العافية. احنا بنكون سريعين. احنا بنشرح لكم عن الفيضانات، بنشرح لكم عن السيول. السيول هي عبارة عن مياه جارية وصعبة ولازم احنا نتحكم فيها التحكم وتجلسون وتسمعون المعلومات. أعطني إجابتك باختصار.
أنا أسمع دائما عن الكوارث، نشوفها في السوشيال ميديا أو في التلفزيون أو أي كان، ولكن الاستعدادية والتدريب يعني يهيئني، ما عندي الخبرة الكافية حتى الآن.
شكرا. Just to translate what they say, I have asked them, how did they find the session? I gave them a brief information about disaster, floods, and cyclone, and if they're confident or not, what they will do in the future. They say that we are now confident, and we would be happy to support you and support other community stakeholders if you knew about this information. It's your turn, Judy.
Yeah. तपाईलाई आजको सेसन कस्तो लाग्यो?
यहाँ आएर आजको सेसन यहाँ पार्टिसिपेट गर्नु पाउँदा धेरै खुसी लागेको छ। अनि नेपालमा साइक्लोन भन्ने चिज कहिले पनि गएको छैन र यहाँ आएर थाहा पायो अनि यो कुरालाई म आफ्नो कम्युनिटीमा गएर सबैलाई सिकाउने छु र शेयर गर्ने छु अनि यस्तो कार्यक्रम फेरि होस् भन्ने चाहना गर्दछु। धन्यवाद।
Thank you. Yeah, I just asked him how he found the training session about cyclone, and he said it was very interesting because cyclone is very uncommon in Nepal, being a landlocked country. So he is now going to share this knowledge and learning with his other community social workers so that they can again train and prepare more volunteers with their respective ethnic groups. So thank you for participating and thanks for your time.
Okay, before we finish, you want to add, Judy, anything?
You want to say something?
Okay, I would like to say that thank you everyone for giving us this opportunity to share our experiences. No one will understand us better than us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and then, let me briefly conclude with the final words. We all know that we have a very short window to act right during disaster. So it's time now to invest in resilience and let these stakeholders lead the community during disasters. And when I say let them lead, does not mean that we wanted to shift the responsibility of the government and burden these community, but we wanted to share the responsibility as an Australian community for the shared reality. And to do that, let's start the conversation today and right from here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent. Please join with me again in thanking Jody and Mohammed. We're now going to introduce Team 2, the Tourist and Tourism Worker Education Using Wi-Fi Portals team. Could you now please welcome to the stage Mark Owens from CFA and Dr. Kamara Pooley from Fire and Rescue New South Wales. Welcome, thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark Owens, Commander Alpine and in charge of CFA's Alpine Service Delivery Team. I completed my master's degree in emergency management in 2020, and I've been in the sector for over 20 years in staff and volunteer roles with the State Emergency Service, Country Fire Authority and Fire Rescue Victoria.
And I'm Kamara Pooley, Senior Firefighter with Fire and Rescue New South Wales. I've been a firefighter for over 10 years and I completed my PhD in 2018.
Our innovative solution is to use Wi-Fi captive portals to play short videos to tourists and tourism workers to enhance disaster prevention and preparedness. When individuals log into a Wi-Fi network, they will view a short video before gaining full access to the network. The video can be tailored to disaster risk that exists in that time and at that location.
Our idea is innovative because it taps into the large-scale adoption of wireless services and the everyday behaviours of an increasingly tech-savvy population to target people while they're on the move. Australia has embraced wireless services and Wi-Fi is now considered an integral part of public infrastructure. Free Wi-Fi is increasingly rolling out, particularly in public and recreational places like accommodation, information centres, parks, cafes, restaurants, airports, and on airlines and buses. Wi-Fi is especially valuable to travellers. I'm sure there are many of you here today who have access to free Wi-Fi networks since arriving at this forum, whether that be in this very venue, in your accommodation, on transport, or in a cafe or restaurant.
Captive portals are web pages that users must view and interact with before accessing a Wi-Fi network. They're generally used by providers to enhance security, monitor usage and control bandwidth. Captive portals can also be used to influence user behaviour, such as showing you an ad for a product or service before you jump online. Even though free Wi-Fi is everywhere and captive portals are common, they've never been used to communicate disaster and preparedness information. This is a great opportunity because the way that captive portals work means that messaging can be specific, measured and timely.
So evidence shows that knowledge is fundamental to disaster prevention and preparedness, and that education is an operational and cost-effective tool for managing disaster risk. Evidence supports the use of short videos to communicate disaster risk. People remember visual messages more clearly than text, and they're more likely to be convinced by something they see than they hear or read about. So we want to produce a series of short videos that inspire people to reduce disaster risk. These videos will show relatable people taking simple, evidence-based, positive actions to reduce the risks and consequences of disasters in a way that normalises these behaviours within the everyday activities of tourists and tourism workers. Within each video, people, a group or a family will travel across different parts of Australia at different times of the year. The final videos will show people who are demographically diverse to enhance relatability. While travelling, the people will engage in disaster prevention and preparedness behaviours that are specific to that time and place. So for example, while travelling on the south coast of New South Wales during bushfire season. Each video in the series will have a similar look and feel to implement a standardised and harmonised approach. This will ensure that the information is delivered consistently and frequently enough to embed disaster prevention and preparedness within the common knowledge of tourists and tourism workers. Each video will also highlight tourism hotspots and activities while promoting a positive holiday vibe, enhancing the likelihood that the videos will be viewed in full by tourists and tourism workers and will be supported by tourism businesses. By promoting the local area and supporting positive behavioural change that reduces risk in tourists and tourism workers, and therefore tourism businesses and local communities, it's likely that these videos will be used by local Wi-Fi service providers.
We've developed a video to show you how this would work. In this video, you'll see a family of tourists visiting a holiday park. They begin by accessing the accommodation Wi-Fi network, and then they watch the Captive Portals disaster preparedness video that was created for their location and time. And in this case, the south coast of New South Wales during bushfire season. You'll see them watch the disaster preparedness video through the Captive Portal. After watching the video and accessing the network, the family then implements a proactive behaviours that are then observed, demonstrating how disaster preparedness video is intended to influence everyday tourist and tourism worker behaviour.
It's going to be calm and mild, temperatures in the mid-20s and no wind. Tune in at 3 p.m.
As you can see, I won't be winning a Logie for my first outing. So while this example showed a bushfire safety video specific to the south coast of New South Wales, videos can be used to educate tourists and tourism workers about disasters of any scale in any location at any time of the year. The technology is scalable from a single building to a large area, from an individual Airbnb building to a chain of hotels to a local government area to the whole east coast of Australia.
Our approach is highly adaptable, so captive portals can select videos based on time and place or current conditions such as the fire danger rating. They can automatically personalise based on the language settings selected on the device, meaning the content can be tailored to the individual language needs of the user. This is important where we know 1/3 of the Australian population are culturally and linguistically diverse, and where many of Australia's tourists and tourism workers are from overseas. Captive portals are also demographically adaptable. They can ask basic information such as your age, and can use this to select videos tailored to individual needs and preferences. Captive portals identify the IP address of the device. This means that we could play a video only once when a user logs on for the first time to avoid viewer fatigue, or we could play different videos every time a user logs on to communicate multiple messages. The videos will be highly visual with limited spoken word, and this will ensure that the content can be understood by people who have low levels of literacy, who speak English as a second language or not at all, or who are deaf or have hearing impairments. When people are blind or they have low vision, the captive portal can use existing voice enabling software on the user's device.
This idea is affordable. There's no cost to the viewer, as Wi-Fi networks are usually provided for free. And there are no additional business costs of hosting a video through an existing captive portal. Excuse me. The videos themselves are inexpensive to create. Evidence shows that short videos can be created and updated quickly, easily and distributed cheaply, and produced at a low cost, and require few resources and little time investment. Our sample video took 2 weeks to write, 1 day to film, 2 weeks to edit, and involved a crew of 2, a cast of 5, and a total of $5,000. These low costs will be significantly offset by the social and economic benefits of prevention and preparedness. The Australian government or a network of governments and industry bodies could fund, develop and distribute the series of videos which are then made freely available. Government incentives could also be used to encourage businesses to promote disaster preparedness through their free Wi-Fi networks.
Our approach is achievable because it taps into existing technology and aligns with existing evidence-based practice. Of course, the approach relies on Wi-Fi accessibility, and there are going to be locations that don't have access to a network. However, where tourists and tourism workers travel through locations or where they use public transport that does have Wi-Fi, they can be captured on the way to these inaccessible locations. In addition, a study conducted in the United States found that Wi-Fi kiosks offer an effective, reliable and affordable means of providing Wi-Fi in otherwise inaccessible areas, and these can be supported by government and industry investment and incentives.
This idea addresses an urgent issue of reaching the tourist and tourism worker with disaster preparedness information. While domestic and international tourism declined during the pandemic, interest and intention to travel has increased since early 2022. If we return to pre-pandemic levels, Australia will see 9.3 million international tourists, a domestic tourism spend of over $80 billion and 660,000 Australians employed in the tourism industry, and an influx of international tourism workers to meet growing demand. Meanwhile, we're seeing an increase in the frequency and severity of disasters, with our changing climate only worsening the risk to tourists and tourist workers. So during the 1920 bushfire crisis, tens of thousands of tourists were trapped by fires on the east coast. Service stations ran out of fuel, supermarkets ran out of food, power was cut and mobile phone services stopped working. Our idea can help get preparedness information out to more people before events like Black Summer, giving people a higher capacity to anticipate and respond to disasters. A higher level of preparedness relieves pressure on emergency services, local communities and critical infrastructure, and enhances efforts to respond to disasters when they occur.
Importantly, we can monitor and evaluate our approach in determining its effectiveness in instigating behavioural change. So evaluation can start with a pre-post test matched pairs study. Within each pair, one area will receive the videos via local Wi-Fi captive portals and the other area will not. Surveys will be conducted with tourists and tourism workers before and after implementation or no implementation to measure changes and differences in perception of risk and knowledge of disaster prevention and preparedness behaviours. Evaluation can also involve interviews conducted to explore tourist, tourism worker and tourism business perceptions of the approach, of the slogan, of different versions of the video, such as animation. We can also embed a like-dislike function at the end of every video to measure immediate term interest and engagement, or use longer term data metrics to measure the number of times each video is viewed, in what location, in what language, through which network. And all of this information can be used to continually monitor, evaluate and improve the approach.
We want to seek feedback from agency and government representatives and disaster preparedness experts. Kamara and I collected some initial feedback from Stacey Jones at Shoalhaven Council in New South Wales about using videos at Holiday Haven tourist parks.
So Stacey, as the Marketing and Business Development Manager of Holiday Haven, what do you think about the idea of using Wi-Fi captive portals to deliver disaster information to tourists?
I think it's a wonderful idea. In fact, I can't believe it hasn't been done already. I think this kind of tool would be so useful for, well, I can say for our Holiday Haven parks, but other holiday parks as well, and other tourist providers. It just seems like such an important initiative that you would be able to educate your guests on the potential dangers in the surrounding area. The fact that it's seasonal, I think that's amazing too, that you can tailor the message according to the season, because that would be very important, that you're not bombarding them with too many messages that they perhaps don't need to have for that time period. Yeah, I can see us using that in the future because we haven't included, like, safety is such a huge issue for Holiday Haven. It's just as important to us as it is to providing great space for guests to have a wonderful holiday. So having that ability to share an important message, but do it in a positive way, I think is really important. And the fact that you can incorporate it into other marketing messages is really appealing as well. So it becomes more of a like common knowledge versus, you know, a dire message that kind of scares people off. So in that respect, I think it's really incredible.
The use of videos embedded in Wi-Fi captive portals to deliver disaster prevention and preparedness information is innovative, yet uses existing technology and embeds evidence-based practice. It is adaptable to disasters of any scale in any area and to different individual needs and preferences.
It can be realistically achieved within a reasonable budget and addresses an urgent wicked problem with efficiency and sustainability. Although there are going to be complexities and challenges involved in full-scale implementation, these can be overcome through government and industry investment incentives, leadership and the formation of networks.
We would like to thank Natural Hazards Research Australia for the opportunity to be involved in this brilliant initiative. And special thanks to Kat Haynes and Bethany Patch for your incredible generosity and support.
And a huge thank you to our wonderful mentors, Maureen, Michael, Helen and Alexandra. We really appreciate your generosity, support, your feedback throughout. It's been invaluable to us. And of course, to the wonderful Anne, who is in all of our thoughts today. Thank you.
Well, I need to go and get out a tech dictionary and start reading some things now to understand just what a captive portal is, but fascinating. Thank you again, Mark and Dr. Kamara. Great. Can I now introduce Team 3, Beacons of Hope? And could you welcome to the stage, please, Jane Toner, Sheridan Keegan, Ahmed Kazim, Linlu Kopman, Yunjin Wang, Minori Disanyaka, and Christiana Hernandez-Santom. Thank you.
We would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians, the Yagara, Jagara and Turrbal people on whose lands we are gathered today. And we would like to pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders, past, present and future, and pay respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders with us today. Always was, always will be. So local knowledge and real-time data are critically important in disaster response. Where I'm from, in the Lismore region, this was demonstrated in the recent floods. When real-time information lagged and broken river and rain gauges gave misleading information, residents were given false assurance of steady river heights when in fact water was rapidly rising. The value of local real-time data was soon realised, however, when quick-thinking Lismore locals put together an online spreadsheet to coordinate community volunteers in rescue boats and identify those in need of rescuing, saving many lives in the process.
Often overlooked in disaster management planning are the less permanent members of the community, people like travellers, international students, refugees, the new to town, or the homeless. As migratory birds are intrinsic to the health of a local ecosystem, transient people are intrinsic to a thriving, inclusive, resilient community. And there is an implied duty of care from the greater community. Transient people are more vulnerable to disasters as they lack the ingrained risk awareness of long-time locals and have less social connections for support.
The Beacons of Hope is a process to capture and share local and real-time information to assist emergency service operators, transient populations, and the wider community in how to respond to disaster. And this creates the opportunity to connect communities in many ways. The Beacons of Hope is also a thing, an interactive and artistic structure with both beauty and brains, a creative expression of place and a repository of local knowledge to be more prepared in disaster response.
Beacons of Hope has a 4-step delivery process. Step 1 is understanding the context of place, the ecology, geology, the history, and the people. Step 2 are community engagement workshops to give voice to the full range of the community, long-term and transient. Step 3 is the production of community-informed disaster management plans and climate adaptation and resilience plans, and design briefs for the Beacon's beauty and brains. Step 4 is the installation of the Beacon of Hope in a prominent and safe place to serve as a focal point for community gathering, information exchange, and celebration.
And so from our Lismore case study, we learned that Lismore's transient population is largely newly arrived residents, including international students and tourists. We also learned that Lismore has a long history of severe flooding with over 30 major floods in the last 150 years. This year, Lismore faced 2 major floods, displacing thousands of people. So now let's zoom in on what's happening at stage 2 of the Beacons of Hope process with the community workshop.
Hello, and welcome to our workshop in Lismore. Now you've been transported into the land of the Bundjalung Nation. And inspired by the phrase always was, always is, always will be, we've designed our workshop to honor the past, discuss the realities of disaster emergencies today, and envision a more resilient future for our communities. Around me, cafe style, we've got our participants talking to different tables and engaging in informal discussions. Let's take a look at what they're looking at.
Both the frequency and severity of disasters demonstrates that prevention and preparedness, working outside the disaster, is critical to enabling communities to bounce back better. Through sharing stories, communities are able to process their experiences and develop a collective understanding of what preparedness means. Right now, we're looking at mapping the resources, skills, and needs of the community to understand what we need to do to be better prepared next time.
So tell me one of the things that you've found.
One of the key things that we found is food insecurity. Many young people who didn't cook that often or had limited storage space were really challenged to access availability and preparation of food. When the power went out, many young people didn't know that they could use the barbecue to cook other things besides meat. So right now we're looking at some strategies to engage young people, build their capacity through things like cooking workshops or food preservation and just basic food literacy. This helps us to inform something called a capability and competency tool, an existing tool which will help us monitor and evaluate community activities.
Thanks, Lynn. Now follow me over to the next table. What's happening over here?
A couple of international students at this table had hard time finding relevant information and did not understand some of the messages about where to go, what to do, which was really stressful. Having real-time critical information from authorities in multiple languages with clear infographics will help us to mitigate this issue. This information would include real-time reliable maps with showing safe places, safe routes, and social networks to contact for support.
This idea of social networks, it's critical for the transient communities, but how exactly is the Beacons of Hope process giving a stronger social networks to international students like yourself?
Yeah, we are planning a program for volunteer disaster leadership roles, known as community carers, who are responsible for following up specific people in the community to make sure they are aware, prepared, and safe. For example, a student council member might contact a list of fellow students, while a community drop-in center volunteer might door knock at people who have signed up for special support.
So for example, if you were in a different community like Tambourine Mountain with different risks and communities, maybe the community carers could be people working in the tourism industry or social good enterprises. Let's move on to the next table. Ahmed.
Findings from the Beacon of Hope process highlighted some technical components that we can integrate into early warning system and emergency messagings to make them more robust. Let's have a look at this video to explore how the Beacon process brains work.
Our Beacon of Hope has beauty and brains. The brain is a distributed network of collaborating smart sensors tuned to detect environmental disturbances like rising water levels, fire, or poor air quality.
Let's say the water level sensor detects rising water, which will lead to floodings. Sensor data is sent to the disaster management team and posted to the local disaster dashboard with the critical information relayed by SMS or app notifications to people in the range of the hazard, to community carers who share it through their networks of transient people, to subscribers of a Beacon of Hope app, say someone who lives here but works elsewhere, or a traveler who saw a QR code at the beacon and subscribed.
App subscribers become a people-centered feedback loop, reporting local hazards via text and images.
Algorithms analyze this feedback and GPS data to determine the appropriate response, which might be to send an emergency rescue team or a drone to scope the hazard. The app encourages neighbors to organize localized emergency support groups to check in and coordinate actions.
The beautiful Beacon of Hope has an interactive screen. In times of peace, this is a source of information and stories about place, its people, and their astonishing resilience in the face of adversity.
During disaster, built-in sirens and lights activate, signaling people to seek further information. The screen can show maps with safe routes to refuge locations, vital services, and resources. Each module is connected to power and internet. For resilience, they have solar panels with batteries for power backup, and 4G SIM card for internet backup. Additional functionality like digital signboard or navigation markers can be added if required.
The Beacon of Hope will fill the gaps and extend the range of the existing early warning and emergency system to ensure more people get timely information. Brains and beauty united.
By the way, it's also got a reliable Wi-Fi and an interactive user interface.
Lismore City Council estimates that rebuilding will take $1 billion. So as we rebuild, it's time to ask, what kind of community do we want to live in? So to finish, we ask our participants to co-create a vision for Lismore and represent this vision artistically so that it can inform the beauty brief of our beacon.
We have been reflected everything that has happened in the workshop and exploring how could we tangibly translate it by artwork that as an expression of our place, the beauty of our beacon. We considered about the possible safe place for our artwork. The beacon brief will be issued to local artists for submission. A small group will shortlist proposals for community to vote on. By the way, we are looking into funding opportunities.
Does the Beacon of Hope process end once this artwork is installed?
Actually, no. It is involving process of creating relationship, people to people, people to place, as well as reflecting and commemorating community. Our beacon will provide ongoing opportunities for community building and connection. It will be a focus of community-based events, celebrating resilience, creating a shared sense of optimism and hope. So a creative impression of our place will be attract all the delivers and visitors Instagrammable moments.
Zooming out from Lismore, you've just been part of the Beacon of Hope process and heard of the tangible outputs for the community. Perhaps you can also imagine the intangible effects of this. People sharing their stories, creating connections, and caring for each other. The Beacon of Hope process relies on cultivating partnerships with traditional owners, local authorities, business and social enterprises, like the Making Good Alliance, who are keen to pilot the process on Tambourine Mountain. Our Beacons of Hope is also adaptable and scalable to suit small or large communities. And we envisage a locally attuned, interconnected regional network of beacons that form an art trail to promote tourism and a resilient emergency infrastructure network.
The Beacons of Hope are a living artifact and tool that brings real-time local information to and from the community in a way that engages and embraces the transient population, creating a more connected community. We're confident the Beacons of Hope will engage with transient populations by bringing them into the community engagement process, amplifying their voices. This will bring to focus their risks and vulnerabilities and create shared responsibilities so that disaster preparation and planning can fill this gap.
Beacons of Hope, disaster preparedness for inclusive, resilient communities.
Well, thank you, Jane, Sheridan, Ahmed, Lynn, Eugene, Minori, and Christina. Fantastic. I'm now going to ask the judges if they'd like to retire for 20 minutes to consider their final decision. And as they do, I'm going to introduce our next speaker. But I think just one last time, I think if I can steal the title of the last presentation, I think we have effectively seen 3 beacons of hope this afternoon with the researchers and the future hope in this sector. So thank you all very much. And regardless of the outcome, you are all winners. So thank you. While the judges think about that, I'd like to invite historian and author Dr. Margaret Cook to give our Disaster Challenge keynote. Margaret is a history lecturer at the University of the Sunshine Coast, a research fellow at Griffith University in the Australian Rivers Institute, and holds honorary research fellow positions at La Trobe University and University of Queensland. Her current research interests include natural hazards, rivers, water, politics, and environmental history. She's authored and co-authored several books. A River with a City Problem, perhaps the best known, but it certainly is to me. And Margaret was the recipient of the John and Ruth Kerr Medal of Distinction for Excellence in Historiography, Historical Research and Writing in 2020. Please welcome Margaret.
Thanks very much, Ian. I too would like to acknowledge the Yagara and Turrbal people on whose land we meet and acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging. I know one thing, I'm glad I'm here and not out the back judging, because that's an extraordinarily difficult challenge. But today I've been asked to talk about wicked problems. Now, Ian's stolen my thunder a little by anticipating the definition, but I will continue and say that for me, a wicked problem refers to a problem that is difficult to resolve rather than being evil. It's a problem that's difficult or impossible to solve because of incomplete, contradictory, and challenging requirements that are really often difficult to even recognise. It can be a problem that just can't be fixed, where there is no single solution to the problem. But for me, that sounds really defeatist. I'm not walking away from a challenge, and neither should anyone else in the room. The main definition that I want to think about today is that the wickedness comes from complex interdependencies. The issues are entwined, and sometimes solving one issue may create other problems, which makes it all increasingly difficult to resolve. Wicked problems require many people to change their mindsets and their behaviour, and they cannot be resolved by one discipline alone. It needs many minds and different approaches and thinking around the table to work towards solutions in order to fully address the complexity. Wicked problems don't have one solution. They need a multifaceted approach, and they really do need new thinking. So now I'm going to present a problem that many of you will be familiar with, and I know I'm speaking to the converted here anyway. This is the problem of the Brisbane River floods. Now, the floods are a natural hydrological event. They're prompted by heavy rain. They'll happen whether there are humans here or not. Floods can be good. They replenish the water in the rivers and our creeks, and they enhance our water supply. They clean the river systems and they rejuvenate habitats for the animals and plants that live in them. It's only a disaster or a hazard when humans have decided to build on the floodplain. In the case of Brisbane, the floodplain of a subtropical river with a long history of floods, the decision to build a city on the floodplain created an ongoing hazard. So how does flooding then become a problem? Well, floodwaters inundate homes and businesses. They cause substantial property loss and, sadly, loss of life, both human and animal. Floodwaters lead to the closure of roads, railway lines and airports. They destroy bridges, ferry terminals and walkways. These factors make evacuation and rescue challenging, and they create very expensive rebuilding. Debris such as pontoons, boats, trees, caravans and houses can become missiles as they career down the river, damaging much in its path. They bring silt and debris downstream that block waterways and close the port. Floodwaters can compromise water and sewage treatment plants, communication systems like the telephone, and they can cause power outages. These last two factors make warnings very difficult. People can be left homeless in the short term, in evacuation centres or with friends, or in the long term, in the slow process of rebuilding, and that, as we've heard today, can drag on. There is a risk of disease and infection in the cleanup process, and people can face health issues, physical and mental, during the floods and for years afterwards. People can lose their employment as their work can be flooded and the businesses may not recover. We know that floods cause poverty and strain on relationships. There can be food shortages through inundation of agricultural areas, warehouses get flooded and transportation routes are cut, which makes food distribution very difficult. Floods have a huge economic cost as they impact on the economy in the long term. But these are actually just problems. In isolation, they're all difficult to manage, and together they compound and cascade. But the part that makes them a wicked problem is the complexity and their interdependencies. And that is deeply embedded in history and culture. And it's those elements that I'm going to speak about now. As history shows, decisions of the past have created this problem. Since the arrival of British colonists, society has aimed at controlling the river rather than regulating building on the floodplain. The solution to flooding was to turn to engineering. So we've built Somerset and Wivenhoe dams for water supply as well as flood mitigation. Successive governments and building owners have put unrealistic faith in Somerset and Wivenhoe dams to prevent floods. Now, the dams do reduce the flood heights, but they are never going to prevent floods, especially when the rain falls downstream in the 50% of the catchment that is downstream of those dams. So simply, floods can't be solved by dams. Since the 1970s, modern disaster managers have known that hard engineering, like dams, should be part of a package of flood mitigation strategies that include land use planning and public education. But flood management is all too often seen by the wider community as an engineering problem. As my evidence, I give you the class action after the 2011 floods. Southeast Queensland needs to consider dams and other hard structures as one option in a suite of mitigation strategies that might embrace greener solutions. Now, herein lies a role for town planners, landscape architects, ecologists, botanists, and others. Encouraged by the powerful myths of dam-created flood prevention, we built on the floodplain, although Aboriginal people, explorers, and the early settlers all knew histories of past large floods. But oblivious to this or deliberately ignoring it, Brisbane residents continually built and expanded the city on the floodplain despite this long history of flood experience. And now we've got decades of data collection and modelling that we're not embracing to make a change. In Southeast Queensland, the development and building industries are very strong, and the city has resisted moves to regulate the floodplain development to the extent that I think is required. We live with the consequences of poor planning. To illustrate my point, Brisbane actually didn't even have a town plan until 1965. So we've really been paying catch up ever since. And we've had 120 years of development really without serious consideration of flood. It wasn't until again the 1970s that the city developed flood planning measures, but they rely really heavily on Wivenhoe Dam to reduce the floods, and the hope that future floods will not be significantly higher. But there's actually no sense in thinking that they may not be higher. And meanwhile, the city just continues to build on the floodplain. Brisbane is one of the fastest growing regions in Australia. And as hundreds of people move to the region each year, many without flood knowledge, we need to give them that knowledge. And we've seen today, just in the last 3 examples, just how incredibly important that is. We need to regulate where they live, and we need to inform them of the inherent risk of floods in specific suburbs. To do this, we need social scientists and communicators, We need to think differently. Perhaps we use writers and artists and the media to better inform the public of the real risks to make our communities more resilient. We need to have First Nations knowledge at the table. It is actually integral to what we do. We need to look closely at where we build in the future and if we can move people. This is an issue that needs to be addressed by governments, lawyers, town planners and developers. We compound the flood hazard through poor building design and regulation, issues that need architects and builders to address. I commend the Queensland Reconstruction Authority on their plans and findings that embrace the idea of build back better. But frankly, sometimes we should not build back. I suggest that there are whole streets in suburbs like Rocklea that need to be reconsidered as habitable. Brave decisions like moving Grantham after the 2011 floods need to be considered for parts of Brisbane, but we also need to be conversant with the social and community issues that may be caused through dislocating those communities and manage that problem. And there maybe is a role for psychologists and community organisations. As a society, we are facing serious climate change and the reality that future floods may be more severe and more frequent in the future. Our town plans need updating, as will the flood control measures. This will need a whole raft of people, scientists, engineers, meteorologists to start. We'll need governments and community to seriously tackle climate change. We need the banking and insurance sector to play their part in not funding foolish development. We currently focus on recovery and not prevention. 97% of recovery and 3% on prevention of every dollar spent is just the wrong equation. How do we change that dynamic when we know that each dollar spent on prevention saves $7? So we need to change the thinking towards more proactive solutions beyond engineered flood control. Can we perhaps think about a flood army in advance of the floods, rather than relying on the mud army to clean up the mess, or the SES, or the military, and others after the event? So what do we do now to put those processes in place, ready for the next flood, which will inevitably come? We need to recognise that we've moved some of the most vulnerable people into risky areas. The old age people's home on the Corso in Wronga is a sterling example. And in doing so, we have created enormous social problems. How do we accommodate and assist the vulnerable in our communities? Who are the champions for them at the decision-making table? We need courage to have difficult and uncomfortable conversations about buyback schemes and moratoriums on building in places of high risk. There have been buyback schemes, but they've been relatively small scale. We need to establish a futures fund that steadily buys properties at risk. This will need money, courage, and political will, and long-term commitment to implement an enduring plan that goes well beyond a 3 or 4 year political cycle. This is about long-term, enduring resilience. Brisbane's flood hazard is not going away. In fact, it's growing. To a large extent, we keep following the same path-dependent strategies in doing exactly what we've done in the past. Path dependency is an economic term that acknowledges that decisions made in the past make change difficult, and the cost of reversal can be very high. Cumulative actions reinforce previous decisions or limit the options available in the future. Sometimes decisions made in the short term can offer just kick the can down the road, defer it to the next generation, postponing vulnerability than offering true sustainability. This is especially in the case of building approvals that are made now, in times of, or they're made in times of drought when we forget floods. And then we've built an inbuilt vulnerability that will kick in at the next flood. Short-term expediency or profit, often for the benefit of an individual at that point in history, can create a liability for the common good in the future. Unpopular or seemingly expensive decisions need a longer temporal framework We need to think ahead to have some short-term pain for long-term gain. We need fresh ways of addressing these problems. We need innovative thinking. Repeating the same mistakes and doing the same things again and again and again is not wise. As they say, only a fool repeats the same mistakes. We need to adapt our behaviour and abandon well-worn strategies that are simply not fit for purpose. We must embrace transdisciplinary thinking and proactively work together to plan a different future. The role of historians like me is to show the paths that we have taken to reach the point that we're at today. We can show moments when other choices could have been made that offer insights into different futures. We can record and share stories and experiences of communities so that knowledge can help inform future decisions and encourage behavioural change and adaptation. Historians' research looks at the root causes of disasters in search of the cultural factors that can help identify ways to work with communities to change those contributors. As I said at the start, wicked problems need many minds and disciplines working together. We need courage, political will, and community empowerment to improve the flood hazard and resilience, and no one group can achieve this alone. Let's go to higher level thinking to think more adventurously and proactively with a whole community approach. We need to move people to prevent development, redesign our cities and buildings, and develop better planning that recognises that floods may become more severe and frequent in the future, and not think that we are flood immune. We need to become proactive and not rely on our long history of recovery. Prevention is a much better strategy, and only through leadership, collaboration, and action together we will be able to fully address the wicked problem of Brisbane River floods. Thank you.
Margaret, thank you very much. Thought-provoking and generally provoking as usual. Thank you. The notion of build back better in harm's way or build back differently is something I think we continue to struggle with. Of course, this week here in Queensland is Get Ready Week, a week to remind people that preparation is vital to be disaster ready, and there are many things that you can do with family around the home to make a big difference. And here to tell us a little bit more about Get Ready Week, in particular in terms of those remote communities, I welcome Kate Rizki to the stage. Thank you.
G'day everyone, fantastic to be here on Turrbal country, and I'd like to also pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land. Absolutely fantastic to be here for this wonderful event. I actually remember getting the opportunity to look through some of the submissions for the Disaster Challenge, and it was just really so fantastic to see the creative and out-of-the-box thinking around disaster preparedness. So it's very cool to be here. So as mentioned, I'm from Get Ready Queensland. That's a statewide initiative that helps Queenslanders prepare their families, their homes, their businesses for the many disaster and weather risks that impact our beautiful state here in Queensland. We work with every single local government to deliver locally led, tailored messaging and activities for communities from up at the Torres Strait, down to Coolangatta, out to Charleville and the Isa, right across Queensland. And as a proud Queenslander, I'm really thrilled with what I get to do. We, along with our ambassador, rugby league legend and all-round good guy, Jonathan Thurston, we ask Queenslanders to do our 3 easy steps to get ready. And I'd love to show you what those are. So just doing a few small things can ensure that your home and family stay safe and comfortable when extreme weather strikes. What we ask Queenslanders to do is, number one, understand your risk. And that's because the impacts from extreme weather are different for everybody. So it's so important to learn about what can happen to you, where you live, and how that could affect your home and your neighbourhood. Second is to make a plan. So having a household emergency plan is important so that your family knows exactly what to do and who to contact when extreme weather strikes. It only takes just a few minutes, and what we hear from Queenslanders is that it really gives people peace of mind to know that all that information is in one place and easy to grab. And third, to pack a kit. Just grabbing a few extra items next time you're at the supermarket to make your emergency kit will mean that you can be safe at home, even if the power, the gas, and the water stop working. So we actually have done research to learn how Queenslanders are taking on these behaviours, and we actually see that more than half of Queenslanders do get ready for natural disasters. But our research also shows us that there are some improvements that can be made, particularly with hard to reach audiences. So that's people who are new to Queensland, young people, people with lived experience of disability, people with low literacy, and people from diverse cultural backgrounds. So in 2022, we've been focusing our efforts on engaging meaningfully with people from these groups, learning from first-hand experiences and identifying ways to help them prepare better. We learned about universal human need for connectivity, how leaning into your community and networks is critical to build knowledge around risks, preparedness behaviours, and support. We also learned about the power of simplicity, how keeping things approachable and attainable means that people are more likely to connect with the message. So we've been building a new suite of resources, including our flagship item, our Dangerous Weather Emergency Plan, which can again be tailored by local councils to specifically suit their communities. And we've worked to simplify how we speak about disaster preparedness and find ways to help people start with the basics and build their resilience over time, rather than asking them to do it all at once. Over the next year and those beyond, we'll continue to look to gather feedback on these and gather insights with the view of continuous improvements for how we can achieve our goals around accessibility and inclusivity. But first, we have our 2022 campaign. It launched on Monday this week, of course, Get Ready Queensland Week, and it will run for the next 6 weeks. Again, we have taken things back to basics, just asking Queenslanders to tap into an existing habit, grocery shopping, to quickly and easily and cheaply get ready. Let's take a look.
This disaster season, make sure you have an emergency kit packed and ready. You'll need a torch and plenty of drinking water. Don't forget spare batteries. Adding a few simple items to your trolley next time you're at the shops will make a huge difference when extreme weather strikes. Hey JT, pass the pack. Yeah, still got it. Pack an emergency kit and get ready, Queensland.
Authorised by the Queensland Government, Brisbane.
No lightning bolts, no dark storm clouds, just really simple messages about one thing you can do to get ready. Pack your emergency kit, grab those few extra items at the shop. Thank you so much to our proud sponsors, Suncorp, for making this happen for us. We're also really thrilled to have IGA stores across Queensland amplifying our message in store and across their channels this year. And I would just like to leave you today by urging you to think about your own family, your own home, your own business. For us Queenslanders, we know it's not a matter of if, but when it comes to natural disasters. So what will you do to be disaster ready? Preparing before it happens is absolutely the best way to ensure you can bounce back quickly. So please, get ready, Queensland. Thank you.
Okay, the time has come to put our 3 groups out of their misery at the pointy end. Our judges have considered their verdict closely, and our winning team will not only receive $5,000, but Natural Hazards Research Australia will promote their winning concept over the next 12 months, explore how the concept can be taken further, and provide speaking opportunities in emergency management and academic forums. So, without letting anything being seen anywhere, let me grab a microphone as I announce the teams. Our Chief Judge, Kath, will say a few words about each of them. Okay, I'll move out the way of that other microphone. Andrew, you're ready? Everybody's ready? So the winner of the inaugural challenge, Addressing the Wicked Problem, is Team 2. Tourist and Tourism, Working Education, Wi-Fi Portals. Would you please welcome Mark Owens from CFA and Dr. Kamara Pooley from Fire and Rescue New South Wales.
All right, so as Team 2 come to the stage, I'll share the comments from all of us as a judging panel. What a wonderful example of disruptive technology being used for good. We loved the innovative and adaptable opportunities your proposal offers. In particular, the flexibility across disaster geography, language, and across preparedness, response, and recovery is really impressive. We would encourage a national approach, but flexibility to allow contextualisation locally. The research allows continuous improvement and refinement over time. Congratulations on a fantastic pitch.
And please remember, these are all winners. In second place today in the challenge, Team 3, Beacons of Hope. Please welcome Jane, Sheridan, Ahmed, Lynn, Eugene, Minori, and Christina to the stage.
Well done. And again, the judges' comments are brains and beauty, what a combo. We're really inspired by your creativity and innovation. Your concept is a wonderful blend of community, technology, culture, and resilience. We liked your well-considered 4-step implementation approach. We think the Beacon of Hope will work across prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery really well. We're really excited to see your innovation come to life soon, and hopefully in time, Beacons of Hope become standard features in all Australian communities.
Thank you. And in third place, could we please welcome Yoti and Mohammed to the stage, mobilising local, culturally and linguistically diverse stakeholders and gatekeepers. Thank you very much.
So again, what an excellent, innovative, and certainly a great solution to a very wicked problem. All of us judges felt the proposal had great merit and is urgently needed. We have no doubt your idea and work will get momentum soon, and we really look forward to collaborating with you and supporting your exciting work. So well done to you all. And as Iain had said, everybody up here is a winner in our eyes. So congratulations to you all.
Can I ask, finalists are all on stage, but judges and the working group and invited reps, if you could stay behind for some further photos, please. I think you'd all agree, I hope you'll all agree, what a fantastic outcome. And as a challenge, the first one, we're already talking in the back room during the judging about how the second one will go. There's judges already talking about funding sources, and recognising grants around the country. So, but as I started off this, it was about the future. And I think we can all agree that our future is in good hands. I said, welcome to the future. Here it is. Thank you. Can I now invite and encourage everyone to enjoy some refreshments in the foyer while you discuss how all of these ideas you've heard during the challenge can go to the next level and think about how you can be part of that. To our audience who have joined us online today, thank you for your time. We hope you enjoyed the live stream and good evening. Thank you.